Let's continue practicing our 8s and fill in the missing numbers. I'm going to start by writing the multiples for 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88 and 96. Now I'm going to multiply a number by 8 to get 32. Now I'm going to look for the number 32 and find out how many 8s we need to count to get to 32, and that's 4. So 4 times 8 is 32. See if you can do this without looking at the multiples. Can you recall your 8 times tables? How quickly can you complete these questions? Time yourself and see if you can beat your own score. Can you recall the 8 times tables? Here I have 100 beads. Let's look at the amount circled and what percentage this is. So we've got 26 out of 100 beads that are circled. How would you write this as a fraction, decimal percentage? So I know to write this as a fraction, we're at 26 out of 100. As a decimal, this is 0.26. And as a percentage, because it's 26 out of 100, you're at 26%. Here we're going to write quarters as fractions and decimals. Now I'm going to use my known facts about quarters. And I'm going to write this on the side. It's really important you know these facts. So a quarter of 100 is 25. 2 quarters of 100 is equal to a half of 100, which is 50. What about 3 quarters? What do you think 3 quarters of 100 is? Yes, it's 75. So you've got 25, 50, 75. What comes next? What's the whole? 1 whole of 100, 25, 50, 75, 100. It's really important you know these facts. Now I'm going to use these to work out my hundredths. So let's look at the 1 quarter. 1 quarter is 25 hundredths. 25 out of 100. So to write this as a decimal, we write 0.25. What about 50 hundredths? We know that 50 hundredths is equivalent to 1/2. So how would you write that as quarters? What about 0.75? How would you write that as quarters and as hundredths? Remember to use the known facts on the side. Use this diagram to help you complete the equivalent statements. So we've got 1 whole bar, which is 100%. Half of that, 1 out of 2 is 50%. 1 out of 5 is 20%, and 1 out of 10 is 10%. Okay, so 1 whole equals 1, which equals 100%. What about 1/2? 1/2 is 1 out of 2. So let's look at the bars where there are 2 equal parts, and that's the 50%, which is equal to 0.5. What about the 1/5? So 5 equal parts. If there are 5 equal parts, 1 will be 20%. Okay, so we know that 20% is equivalent to 20 hundredths, 20 out of 100. And that is equivalent to 2 tenths. So the 2 will go in the tenths column. So we've got 0.2 there. And the tenths, we've got 1 out of 10 equal parts, which is 10%. Okay, we've got 1/10 there. So the digit 1 will go in the tenths column and a 0 in the ones column. So it's 0.1. It's really important you use these known facts. Because, for example, if we want to find out what 2/5 is, we can use what we know about 1/5. So if 1/5 is 20%, 2/5 would be 40%, because 20% times 2 is 40. What about 3/5? Okay, let's look at the bar. 3/5 would be 3 times 20%, which is What do you think it is? And what about 4/5? Okay, the same goes with the tenth. So 1/10 equals 10%. So what would 2/10 be? It would be 20%. What about 3/10? What about 5/10? Okay, it's really important you know these facts and you learn them. Read and underline the keywords first. On Monday morning, there were 100 visitors at the zoo, 42 visitors were adults, and the rest were children. What percentage of the visitors on Monday morning were children? So the question here is asking for a percentage. Okay, I'm going to represent this in a bar. Okay, so my whole bar will be the total. It's 100 visitors, which is the 100%. We know that 42 of them were adults, so I'm going to show that. And the rest of that bar is children. Okay, so how do we work out what the rest is? So we know that 42 out of 100 is 42%. So 42% were adults. What about the rest? Okay, we want to take away that 42. So I'm going to do 100 subtract 42, which equals 58. So there were 58 out of 100 visitors that were children, and 58 out of 100 as a percentage is 58%. Layla gets some money for her birthday. She spends 1/5 and saves the rest. What percentage does she save? Okay, so I know she spends 1/5, so I'm going to represent this in my bar. Because she spends 1/5, I'm going to split it into 5 equal parts, okay? The whole, which is the 100%, I'm going to represent there. And 1 out of 5 she spends, so I'm going to label that. Now the rest of that, she saves. Okay? So, we know that she spends 1/5. So she must save 4/5. But we want this as a percentage. Now, if you think back to the equivalent percentages, you'll remember that 1/5 is equivalent to 20%. So what would 4/5 be equivalent to? If you count those 20s, you get 80%. 4/5 is 80%. So she saves 80% of her money.